What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are my two great co-hosts, Fede Perez and Ralph Hannah. And guys, here we are. It's finally May, a new month. We're already near halfway through the year of 2023. It's hard to believe. There's been a lot of changes in Paraguay. We are speaking literally a couple days after the country elected a new president, Santiago Peña. But we're not here to talk politics. We're not here to talk about the controversy that's been going on. We're talking about the drama that's been happening in Paraguayan football. We'll talk about what's been going on with our teams in the Copa Libertadores and in the Sudamericana. We're also seeing some, very nice performances come from one young Paraguayan who officially won Player of the Match, Julio Enciso, performing very well over there at Brighton and Hove Albion as they continue to fight to qualify for Europe. Certainly we are also talking about what's been going on with the national team. They'll be taking on Nicaragua in the final game before World Cup qualifying beginning in September. And a lot has been going on, Fede. I'll go to you first on this one because it's been very much dramatic, at least from a continental standpoint, about what's been going on with Paraguayan teams. But we'll get to that afterwards. We do have to talk about what's been going on with Julio Enciso. A wonderful performances now for Brighton. Definitely starting to find a crucial role under Roberto Rojas, qualifying for, at least hoping to qualify for the champion, for the Europa League. Miggy at Newcastle United is probably all but certain that they're going to play in the Champions League next season, which is incredible for us as Paraguayans to see him play in the biggest tournament. And yeah, it's been a good season for both those two players.
This is the way I'm going to greet you, buddy, with the Enciso Fest. The way that he loves celebrating his goals, just like he did in Libertadores, just like he's doing it now in Brighton. I love to see him that way. I'm having so much fun this season in the Premier League. I don't remember when was the last time. I know you guys love the Premier League. You follow it every season. But, for us here in Paraguay, it's very special because just like I was telling somebody at the beginning of the season, we've had Paraguayans before, but they were mostly midfielders, defenders. Now we have attacking players. We have players that can score. We have players that make the difference, like Miguel Almiron and Julio Enciso, that's just having a breakthrough season. He's been starting for what now? 4 games in a row. This is just crazy, and I'm loving it. He's living the dream, to be honest. And I love to see him this happy, to see him improve his game even more, to see him have a coach that's just pushing him. I'm loving what I'm seeing from this season from Julio Enciso. At the beginning of the season, some people were like saying, I don't think he's even going to start the whole season. They're gonna have him in this long process. But look at him now; he's one of the stars. They got revenge on Manchester United too, which is, I think, something that locker room also wanted with that last minute goal from McAllister. But he's been making the difference pretty much in every time he has the ball. So I'm looking forward to seeing more and more from Julio Enciso and Brighton. And I know Brighton fans are also already loving him because I'm seeing that fan base going crazy every time Julio Enciso is doing something. And so many times he's been on the social media also. That's something that really caught my eye. Apparently he's pretty good at that also, right? He has the feedback with the fans and with everybody that follows Brighton. That's why they keep on using him. So it's great to see him. As for our game here in our country, we had plenty of games this week. We had Libertadores, we had Sudamericana. Pretty much everybody played, I believe, right? Guarani, Sudamericana, Tacuary also did it. In Libertadores, I did not like the results, obviously. All 3 teams really had bad results. Maybe Olympia can say something good about their time, but that's pretty much because they haven't won anything lately, and so they needed something, and they got something, I believe, against that match against Atlético Nacional. But we'll go game by game slowly on this podcast, full of Paraguayan football, like always, Roberto. Great to be back.
Of course, great to see you back, Fede. And yeah, Ralph, going into that, I think, I don't want to be cruel or anything, but Julio, maybe if he was listening about how his challenge has been to start a game completely for 90 minutes, I guess you could finally eat your words there, because he did start his first game, an entire match, playing an entire match for the first time in over a year, like you said, Ralph. So I guess the next challenge for him is to continue to hopefully score, and you're seeing it as well. He obviously didn't get on target yesterday against Manchester United, but you saw the attempts that he's having. You're seeing him that he's not afraid to go from distance, and you could see as well just the way that he's been skilled. I think he did like some sort of like skill past Casemiro and Luke Shaw. It shows that okay, yeah, if a 19-year-old is doing this against players who played for numerous years, full on internationals as well, who knows what's up for him now. It's good to see, and it's obviously hopeful that he can show that kind of like talent now when he shifts into the Roja for the next friendly that we have against Nicaragua in June, and then obviously for the upcoming qualifiers later in September.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, he's I remember saying his next challenge was to play 90 minutes, which he finally did against Man United. That's the first time in over a year that he made a full 90 minutes at senior level. And this is, I think, what we want to see from him now, that the good thing is De Zerbi's found a place for him. So last night was really interesting. Was it last night? I can't remember. Yeah, last night that he played with Mitoma. We hadn't seen that much. So Mitoma has been on the wing, and often Julio Enciso has been replacing him on the wing. But I think now in this second striker role that he's been playing recently, it shows that De Zerbi has more trust for him to be in the middle, where he can be more effective, as you're just mentioning, Roberto. And also, I think it gives him a little less defensive kind of responsibilities, because if you're one of the guys on the wings with Brighton, you have to be getting back a lot as well. So I think this is great because he's found the right place for him, and then he's taken that chance. He's getting the starts, and now he got the full 90 minutes. So everything is boding very well. One, for him to stay next season, which, not go on loan, which I think it was fair to say back in January. We weren't sure what might happen, but also, like you say, for the national team, it's getting exciting, right? And for me, I really liked watching him hold off Casemiro, because if you're doing that against Brazil, then I've got to hope that we can start doing something interesting in these qualifiers against our direct rivals. They're going to be like your Chiles, Colombias, Ecuador, So I think it's very positive and it's exciting. You mentioned the Nicaragua game. I mean, nobody knows where it will take place exactly, except that it will be in Paraguay and when, but we will find out the exact date soon. And that's a big game because it's the last match before the qualifiers start again. And it's crazy to think how we came around to that already, right?
Honestly, it's flown by so fast. You can't even explain it, honestly. But let's talk about what's been going on in the Copa Libertadores. We're going to start with the result that I think all of us did not expect at all. I mean, this one was probably the biggest shock of them all. It was Cerro Porteño against Bolivar at a packed General Pablo Rojas, La Nueva Olla, over the Asunción. Cerro had come just after narrowly losing to Palmeiras over at the Morumbi a couple of weeks ago. Really in a position where they needed to get the win over here in Asunción to put them in pole position to qualify to the round of 16, and they absolutely blew it. A 4-0 loss to Bolivar. Goals from Villamil in the 18th minute, an own goal in the 23rd minute off a defensive mistake from Piris da Mota, and then another one in the 25th minute, and then it just finished it off with a Rodriguez goal in the 49th minute. A 4-0 loss to Cerro Porteño. This was an absolute embarrassment, fan, and I'll go to you on this one because I think we can forgive Cerro and Facundo Sava for the result against Libertad. What that happened was, I think, an accident. I don't think accidents can happen twice. So, I mean, after assessing this, and I've seen the highlights, and I saw just this entire defensive, mishap and miscommunication and just misorganization as a whole, especially not even able to respond attacking wise as well. What the hell happened over there at Barrio Redo the other day?
It really felt like a nightmare for Cerro Porteño. I mean, that first half, those first 30 minutes, and we got to talk about the decisions from the coach also. I mean, just the team that he threw out there. Yeah, it was very similar to the game to the team and that we saw against Palmeiras just a week ago, but it was not the same game, and Bolivar really came out to it. And if you watch Bolivar's games before playing Cerro Porteño, you can see that they were a very aggressive attacking team with a coach that I believe is not Bolivian. He's from Spain. This is something that we're seeing a lot lately here in South America. These Spain coaches that take on these weird teams but make them really strong with their playing kind of style, and that kind of surprise. So that were that was a very big surprise, I believe, for Cerro Porteño players. I mean, I don't know if they took it for granted that they were playing a believing team, maybe, and maybe they didn't study them that much. Because I mean, the way that I saw it is they didn't know what they were going up against, and they were giving up way too much space in that field. Yes, this is a problem that we've seen before from Cerro Porteño. We saw it in that game against Libertad. I think I saw it against Luqueño also. Luqueño once scored 3 goals on them. So it's not the first time this happened to Cerro Porteño. I mean, they were very happy that in these last 2 games, I believe it was against Guarani and Guaireni in the local league, that they didn't get scored on. So they were thinking that they were very strong back there, but it was not the situation against Bolivar. I mean, Libertadores is a whole other stage. It's a whole other level. And Cerro just did not know how to play the game, I believe. And you had several players that were just not up to the challenge. I mean, Brock, the defender, the Brazilian, this is a player that they brought for these kind of games, and he did not respond. I mean, this is the player you needed out there because Juan Patiño was just coming back from injury, so you really needed Brock to stand out back there, and he really had issues. I mean, he was not fast enough against the Bolivians, and the Bolivian team really left with a 4-0. And it was a shame. I mean, I was just thinking about the fans. I was thinking about the Cerro Porteño fans and just putting out their money to watch this game, their expectations on what they've seen lately from this team and this situation. And then talking more a little bit about the players. I mean, Rafael Carrascal also in the midfield. I mean, I'm talking about the foreign players because you're expecting a lot more from them, right? And this is a player that has had his criticism already from the fans, that he's not wanted here anymore, but he still manages to get himself back on the team on a big game like this one. And another player that did not show up. I mean, he couldn't catch a ball, and he was just playing at a pace that was just not Libertadores pace. And that was just not what Cerro Porteño needed in that midfield. Yes, they were missing Churin, their best forward. They're not getting the same from Robert Morales yet that we've seen before from this player. They took him out in halftime, and that was really weird. Also, just the way that Saba managed the game. I don't know what you guys think about that, but you know, when your team is losing by that many goals and you only make one change at halftime, and you don't fix the issues that were clearly there, the defense and the midfield, you didn't do much about it. I think, you know, Saba is just saying this is just a bad day, guys. I mean, this is just what we are. We can have a bad day in defense and they can score a lot on us. We're going to get our chances. Yes, Cerro had many opportunities to at least score one and try to do something, but the match was over at 30 minutes, Ralph. I mean, they scored way too early and they scored way too many.
It was interesting to hear Saba after the game, because he suggested it wasn't mental. It wasn't like a mental issue. It was more like a tactical issue. But when you look at it, when you think about it, if you concede 3 goals in, I think it's in like 7 minutes or something. Let me just check that. 3 goals in, in 7 minutes. Of course, it's mental. I mean, that wasn't that suddenly they figured things out. You have the error, the surprise error by Jean, right, on the first goal, which maybe caused, you know, Cerro to think, wow, we're losing to a Bolivian team. Oh, and our best player is usually the goalkeeper, has made a mistake. And then you get the own goal, and then you get the 3rd goal, all in quick succession. That has to be, that can't just be tactical. One thing that he did point out from the tactics side, and I think you picked up on, was Carrascal. He wasn't happy with Carrascal and Bobadilla's positioning. He thought they were being too aggressive against the team that, like you say, come out and are very good attacking. And to his point, he said that we fixed that in the second half and we played much better. That's true. But the problem is you're already 3-0, well, 4-0 down, because the 4th goal comes very early in the second half. But it was these results are really hard to understand, just like the Libertad game, because it came at a time that Cerro have been playing very well. Like this is the exact team, except for Churin, who was out injured, and Fernandez was playing instead. It's the exact same team that went to Palmeiras and did so well. So I mean, it's very hard to understand like how the level can change so drastically. This was historically bad for Cerro. I mean, Bolivar or no Bolivian team had ever won 4-0 away from home in the history of the Libertadores. So this is like historically bad. And how do you go from almost beating Palmeiras, or at least holding your own for about 55, 60 minutes, to this? And it's just like the Libertad game. How does Cerro dominate the league? Because if you take out the Libertad game, they've been dominating the league, and then they fall away 5-0. And for me, I can only think it's a mental preparation thing. It can't just be tactics, but to concede so many goals in such quick succession, there has to be something going on there. So maybe, and remember, we know under Chiqui Arce, there were problems in that dressing room. People weren't all happy. And that's why Chiqui Arce leaves, even though he had done, so well over the years, but there was something that couldn't be fixed. And so that's part of the reason Sava comes in. And maybe you're seeing that all of these issues aren't fixed yet. The good news for Cerro, Juan Patiño was on the bench. He should be fit for the weekend. I think they really need him back in defense. Wilder Vieira came on. He's been a very important part of this midfield. And again, like he's getting back to full fitness. So is Lucena as well. He's getting back to full fitness. So maybe there's a few changes in personnel that can help Cerro ride these waves. And let's see how they do the weekend. They go Resistencia this weekend. They reacted really well when they lost 5-0 to Libertad. They then went on a run of like 3-4 games where they won in the local league. So let's see if they can kind of click back into gear against Resistencia, which is on Saturday or Sunday night, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it really is now much more difficult. And of course, we're speaking, on the day as well that Palmeiras beat Barcelona 2-0, another direct rival. So at the time of recording, Cerro are dead last and not even in contention to qualify for the Sudamericana, let alone for the round 16. So, Ralph, I mean, to you on this one, they still have to play Palmeiras at home. They have to travel to Bolivar against a side that smacked 4 against them. And now they have to go all the way to altitude to play them, and then they have to go to Guayaquil to finish it off against Barcelona. So, in theory, this was the last game that they played that is kind of the easiest one, where they thought, 3 points was a must, and they blew it. So now they have to beat a Palmeiras side that is one of the favorites to win this competition, let alone win the group, and then travel to altitude in 2 different locations in Bolivia and in Ecuador. I mean, is it safe to say that, Cerro's chance of really qualifying to the next round has been blown here? Like it's ended, or is there still a chance that they could still do it, or even go for a Sudamericana transfer?
Yeah, I mean, it's still very close, the group, but to your point, the easiest game is the Bolivian side at home, which is going back to the World Cup qualifiers when Paraguay drew at home to Bolivia. Then you are like, wait a minute, because you've just blown your 3 points that everybody else gets. Because with all due respect to Bolivia, this is usually what happens. They can win the home games, but they lose the away games. And you would expect that Barcelona will keep picking up points against them. And so that's maybe your direct rival now, as you've lost to Bolivia at home, because Palmeiras, we assume, will go through first, even though they're sitting second at the moment on goal difference. So it's looking very difficult, because the way the Palmeiras game comes is that Palmeiras still need to win games. They still need to pick up points. They're going to be playing their best team, and that's going to be a very difficult rival, whether you're at home or not. I mean, last time they lost 3-0 at home in the last 16. So I wouldn't expect that Palmeiras are going to be an easy task. We saw that Cerro really pushed them in that last game. But when they had to come into their extra gear, and when people started making substitutions, the difference was much bigger. So I think you're right. It's looking very, very difficult. Can they get a result in the altitude of La Paz? That's maybe what they need to do now. They need to somehow reverse what's happened here to pick up those 3 points that they weren't expecting. Barcelona it's not at altitude, it's Guayaquil, so it's not quite as difficult, but that's going to be a kind of all or nothing game, I would imagine, by the time they get there. So again, the mental part is going to come in, which is what we're seeing Cerro don't quite have at the moment.
That's the thing with this team, Ralph. I mean, the last big games this team or this squad has played, besides the coach that they've had, because before it was with Chiqui Arce, and now the same thing is happening with Sava. I mean, it happened with Libertad. It happened now against Bolivar. These were big games on the calendar. This was a must win for them, because now the only home game you have is against Palmeiras, and now you're gonna have to go out against Palmeiras. When if you would have beaten this Bolivian team, maybe with a draw, maybe even losing at home against Palmeiras, you were still in a run for it. Right now you're dead last, and you're even thinking about Sudamericana, to be honest. Hey, maybe we can clinch that third spot. So we can lose against Palmeiras at home, which would be even the reasonable thing. I mean, I would be surprised if this team comes together and can beat Palmeiras. Even though Bolívar did it, but in the altitude, yes, they beat Palmeiras. They were the only one to beat them so far. But it looks really hard for Cerro Porteño. I mean, the challenge itself looks really hard. And what I didn't like about Cerro Porteño the other day, especially, is, I mean, I'm loving what I'm seeing in the local league from Claudio Aquino, from Federico Carrizo, but they haven't showed up that much in Libertadores. So apparently it is a totally different stage also for the creative players, for the offensive players, the attacking players that need to make a difference on this team. And if Cerro does not have all their pieces, it's going to look really hard for them, Roberto. I'm not liking their chances after they lost 4-0, obviously. And I'm looking at Sudamericana. I think Sudamericana looks really good right now.
Yeah, I mean, again, this was kind of the debate that we had when the draw was announced, that maybe transferring to the Sudamericana wasn't the worst case scenario. But of course, you know, when you start winning games and getting results, or at least performances in the way that you played against Palmeiras, and now this happens, you're like, okay, what exactly is this real identity of the side? Nobody knows. So I think it's going to be interesting. But like you said, we still got 3 more games, still got a lot of things that could indeed happen. But I think for now, realistically, just looking at this and the way that they kind of blew this result, I think Sudamericana is really the realistic goal for now. I don't think they're going to have enough points to get in these last 3 games, assuming a miracle they can indeed beat Palmeiras, which they can. You know, it's likely. Anything can happen. You know, definitely the motivational factor comes into the place with those players. But I just think, just seeing the way that they've been performing and the result that you saw against Bolivar, you just think, is this team even good enough to qualify? Nobody knows. So I think that's always the crucial thing. We're going to have to wait and see what happens in the next few games. We switch gears now to their local rivals, Olimpia, who traveled all the way to Medellin to take on Atlético Nacional. Ended up getting a 2-2 result thanks from 2 comeback goals. You know, Atlético Nacional took the lead twice before Olimpia scored goals from Fernando Cardoso again, and Facundo Burrera, you know, someone that has, you know, really transformed his luck over there at Olimpia. So at the time of recording, and with Patronato defeating Melgar, Atlético Nacional with 7 points, Olimpia with 5, Patronato with 3, and Melgar with 1 point. So, you know, I'll go to Ralph on this one. I think the result is a huge one for Olimpia because, you know, certainly still unbeaten. You know, I think certainly they still have to play 2 games at home against direct rivals, one of them being Atlético Nacional. But I would say it's, after these 3 results, I think it's perfectly set up, and it shows that Olimpia can compete at least away from home, that they've been able to get results, which is so crucial if you want to get out of the group and qualify to the round of 16.
Yeah, it's, on the face of it, it's a good result because you don't want to get beaten away from home. And this is probably the most difficult game they have in the group, right? It's a very easy group. Let's be honest, okay? I mean, we talked about Cerro having Palmeiras and going to altitude. They've got a team that's not even in the top division. They got Melgar. So, I mean, it is an easy group, and we hope they will progress. But they're doing what they should. They may be. Olympia's been a really hard team to understand under Aguirre, right? Because sometimes they have really disappointing results, like, I don't know, losing to Luqueño, but then they can pull out a performance. And now you're seeing again, they pull out the performance, and maybe it's the difference with Cerro. That is the mental strength, because they're not playing that well, but they're finding the results. And that happens when you have someone like Richard Ortiz. We talked about Julio Enciso playing 90 minutes. Richard Ortiz played 90 minutes in Medellin. That's a really big statement for him, because he's old now, and he's always had fitness problems since the beginning of his career. Not fitness, sorry, but like injury problems since the beginning of his career. So that was, I think, really important that they had him in there guiding the team. Fernando Cardoso, let's talk about him. His daughter was born as he was scoring the goal and making the assist for the second the second goal. So talk about like pressure. Then he's performing there, and back home his second daughter's being born. So that was kind of cool to see that they had that double celebration. And then Bruera is a player that really we've seen he hasn't clicked as well at Olympia, not like he was doing at Nacional. He scored quite a few penalties. Most of his goals, I think half his goals have been penalties. But he's had two really important goals off the bench. One, the winner against Libertad in the league, and now he scored this important equalizer, where it was one of those kind of the ball's bouncing around in the box, and maybe actually someone else could have shot, but he said, no, I'm taking this on, and he fires it home, and that's what he's there to do, right? So I think for Olympia, it was a good performance in terms of that gritty and grinding out the result that they needed. And like you say, because they have the two games at home, they should really be good to get at least the second spot behind Atlético Nacional.
The subs were so important in this game, right? I mean, the changes that the coach made, just because Aguirre has also been kind of on spotlight, just the way that he's managed his team so far. He put in the same team again that he's been using in Libertadores, a team that has not looked good in the local league. Yes, Olympia is not motivated in the local league. They're very far away from Libertad, from even trying to do something in this championship. But, the motivation is there in Libertadores. I mean, every time Olympia plays Libertadores, they know that they got to bring it. They know that they got to take their history into that pitch and fight every single ball, even though if they're not in a good moment right now. And that's what they did against Atlético Nacional. They threw that heavy jersey that they have with 3 Libertadores, and they made the Colombians respect them. And I saw that from minute one. I mean, I saw an Olympia attacking Atlético Nacional, which is something that I did not expect to see in this game. I thought Olympia was going to play on the counter attack. I thought they were going to give the ball to Atlético Nacional, because Colombian teams are teams that manage the ball really well. And that was not the case. I mean, Olympia was really trying to go at him, and they had really good opportunities. I was loving what I saw from this team in the first half, until that golazo from one of the top scorers that this Libertadores has, from so far away. Gaston Olveira could not do anything with that ball, but how many times did Gaston Olveira come to the rescue in this game in particular? I was looking at the stats, and it was around 8-9 saves from him. So that does not talk well, I believe, from the defense. I'm still not feeling the whole Luis Zarate, Mateo Gamarra duo back there, especially Zarate. I don't know why they keep on putting this kid in, but they're trying to promote them. They're very young. They're the youngest you got in the squad. I believe that Antolina Caraz can give you a hand in these kind of games, especially late in the games. Ralph mentioned there just how old Richard Ortiz is in the midfield, but just how important Richard Ortiz is to handle the ball, to handle the pace of this team. And he's looking a lot better ever since he came back from injury. He's now starting to be that player again. And watch out for him. He's also on the national team, and he's been used by Steloto lately. So if he's playing well by September, he could also be called up. And then you got the flaws, I believe, in this team. Hugo Fernandez, who's now 25 years old. I mean, you're expecting for this kid to make a difference, especially with Derlis Gonzalez out. You need him. You need Fernando Cardoso to be the difference on the midfield, and they're just not doing it that much. Fernando Cardoso is scoring, but I'm not seeing the same thing from Hugo Fernandez. Yes, he chipped in a ball there for Paiva, who then puts it back for Fernando Cardoso. It ends up in a goal, but Hugo Fernandez has been probably on Olympia fans' bad side lately. He's one of those guys that they want out of the team, especially when you're seeing Manuel Romero coming like he's been doing lately, and he's going up against Hugo Fernandez in that spot. Even though he got sent off with the red card, and I was even hearing somebody from the board members saying that there were European scouts on the game watching Manuel Romero. So watch out for this kid. He looks really well, and he found his spot on the team. He's playing a lot. He's getting the opportunities, and I think he's making the best out of them. Even though he got sent off, we will not see him on the next game. This is a special young player that is also getting game time on this Olympia. Olympia got credit, just like they did against Patronato, Roberto. I think this just gives them a little bit of air for the next games. Not much more than that. Olympia does not have much more than that right now. But
No,
just like Ralph said, it's an easy group. They got to get out of this group. If they don't get out of this group, I mean, come on.
yeah, it's going to make it more difficult for them. I think certainly in the position that they're in, and kind of the next few games that they play, they're in a spot where they could indeed qualify. And like you said, it's always good to get a good start and then to continue that with the next remaining game. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens there as we switch gears to another team that has also been disappointing in the Copa Libertadores, and that's Libertad. As we know, Libertad were in a group with Atlético Paranaense, Alianza Lima, and Atlético Mineiro. They're coming off a loss to Alianza Lima back a few days ago. They they take on Atlético Paranaense at the Defensores, another chance to get some sort of result at home. They take the lead early on from Oscar Cardoso in the 10th minute before collapsing again. Fede with 2 goals from Atlético Paranaense in the second half. I mean, now Libertad are under the obligation to travel twice away at home. They still have to play Atlético Mineiro in the final day, but it's a similar case to Cerro Porteño. I think even worse in this way because they lost both their games at home, one against a team that they should beat, and against Atlético Paranaense where they took the lead early on. It seems like Daniel Garnero just doesn't know how to play this competition. And, Ralph, you can go on this one and speak about it afterwards, but is it getting too late for these guys? Because, I think for Libertad, yes, it was a difficult group to be in with 2 Brazilians. And I think their hope was to get results against them, and the win against Paranaense. It was, if they had to get it, they should have gotten in this one last night. But I don't see any chance of them qualifying at all, let alone to maybe a Sudamericana, especially if they still have to travel to Lima, they still have to take on Paranaense in Curitiba, and then finish it off in Brazil and against Mineiro, the Defensores. I don't know how they can get through this, Fed. I could be wrong, but do you see any hope for this Libertad side?
That game against Alianza Lima is just so heavy right now in this group. I mean, that's the game that you needed to win. Oh my God, what happened in that second half, guys? I mean, I was watching the game. I loved what I saw in those first 45 minutes. I mean, Oscar Tacuara Cardoso was getting so many opportunities. I think he had like 2 more shots after he scored early in the game to put a second goal on that scoreboard. So I was liking it, and so Gonzalez was making a difference, getting his first start in Libertadores. I mean, watch out for this kid. He's been making a difference also on the local league. He was also pointed out right as soon as Enciso left here. They brought him to the main team and they said, this kid is the next one. And that's just how easy it is here in Libertad. They got so many in that academy that they know which one is the next one. And the next one, and he's currently showing it, is Enzo Gonzalez. Yeah, he still needs to develop. He still needs to grow, but he's getting those opportunities playing alongside Tacuara Cardoso, just like Enciso did. And oh my God, he a very difficult player to guard. I mean, all defenders are having problems with this kid. Tacuara Cardoso is scoring pretty much in every game. I think that's important for Libertad, but they needed to clinch this match in the first 45 minutes, Ralph. I mean, I don't know why they didn't do it. I mean, that second half, they gave way too many opportunities away. And even though I have liked the defense from Libertad lately, I think Barbosa is playing a lot better than he did last year around alongside Viera. They always play. They pretty much don't change it up back there. But I don't know what happened in that second half. Do you have the explanation, or is it just simply like Roberto said, Garnero does not know how to do it?
We've just seen this so many times before, to the same point that, remember, is Romulo comes on as a sub for Paranaense and scores the equalizer. He did the same thing last year. He scored that 90th minute equalizer coming off the bench that put them out of the cup last year. I mean, it's the frustrating thing. The only thing I saw is, it was a really good first half. The players you've mentioned as well, Enzo Gonzalez was doing really well. The thing about the second half that Paranaense did, and they did this, I remember in the away, when they played them away in Brazil, in the second half, they just give Libertad more of the ball. It's a very simple thing, but they just said, you're trying to hit us on the counter attack, have more of the ball, and you're not going to counter us. And Garnero doesn't know what to do when that happens, because he had the real good setup with Tito Villalba and Enzo Gonzalez, because they're so not just quick, but they're so skillful, right? And they can get you out of the tight space, and all of a sudden on the counter you're doing something. And Paranaense saw that and said, well, okay, have more of the ball, see what you can do to us now. Obviously, it came after they had scored the equalizer, but even then they didn't know what to do, and then they go and get the winner, which the winner was, I mean, it's a very good cross. And finish, but then you also thought with Libertad there was strange defending, that you just left the player, I think it's Terrans, you just left him free on the left, right, from a set play. I mean, you have to start organizing yourself up to set pieces to pick up the original kicker of the set piece, right? Because they're always going to be free. So it was a bit of maybe a mental lapse. We're talking about that a lot today for that second goal. But I think tactically, yeah, it's the thing is, Paranaense, the same thing happened last year. So that's why it's sometimes difficult to see with Garnero what's going on, because he must have known that this could happen, because it's what they did last year. And still they didn't have an answer, right? I mean, and they were throwing on everybody. Roque even came on. They put on Alfio Oviedo. Roque came on. Another youngster, Ruben Lescano. Matias Espinosa was on to try and shoot from distance. I mean, they tried everything in that second half, but they couldn't really get close once Atlético Paranaense had taken the lead, and that's going to be an issue. So it was a really tough group, but like Cerro, they messed up in the home game. They had to win, and that's probably what's going to cost them.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's going to be very difficult for them to get back to this. I just want to go deep into the Sudamericana, because obviously we talk about negative results. Let's talk about one positive one with Tacuaru, and a big win over there against Oriente Petrolero at the Defensores. 2 goals from Edson Carias and the goal from Ezequiel Alonso to, at least kind of boost their chances to maybe qualify for the knockout round playoffs. And, you still got Rebel Bragantino and Estudiantes dominating them. Guarani getting a draw against Emelec. They still are right there in the bottom, but it's very tight. All the teams with 4 points, only goal difference separates some things, like 4 goals from 4th place Guarani to Huracan, who's in 1st place. So, Fede, I mean, both of these teams, at least in the Sudamericana, at least in results wise, they're still in with a chance. I mean, with Guarani, Santander getting onto the score sheet, could have really given them the chance to get all 3 points, but it was a goal from Alejandro Cabeza to snatch a point for Emelec. They still got to play Danubio in Montevideo. They still got to go to Guayaquil to take on Emelec, and then they finish it off against Huracan, whereas Tacuaru will have to play Estudiantes at home, have to travel all the way to San Cruz de la Sierra in Bolivia, and then finish it off over there in Brazil against Bragantino. So any chance for both of them to make it? Maybe one, maybe, none of them at all. I mean, how do you assess their opportunity? But, congrats to Tacuaru for getting, correct me if I'm wrong, Ralph, about how much money that they get. If you want to jump in, they've gotten a lot in the
$100,000.
$100,000. That's
a win.
Big result for them and big economic boost for them as well, Fede.
Good motivation to keep running in that game, right? When you feel like you're out of the cup and you're running for $100,000. I mean, I'm liking that money prize that Conmebol just threw at these kind of games in Sudamericana. I think we talked about it when the draw was made, and I think it just makes these kind of games even more special for these kids, for these players. Obviously, they want to stand out in these kind of games, especially the young ones, just like Elias Alfonso did for Tacuarí. I mean, I love what I saw from him. Great kid. He's also from Libertad Academy. He doesn't have a contract with them anymore. I believe he's only on a deal with Tacuarí just this year, so we might see him move forward after this year. He's 23 now, so he's trying to make a name for himself. And these are the kind of games that you can do that. Having a great game, making a difference with the plays, and Tacuarí has that kind of players. That's the idea behind Tacuarí right now, just to sell players. Not so much get the results, not so much make an impact in the Sudamericana. But this was a great result also for the new coach Ivan Almeida, who took on this team just a couple of weeks ago. So they're showing up. They're showing better stuff. They're showing like they could compete in this group now, far from those first games, especially the one against Bragantino. And for Guarani, I like their chances. I think they do still have an opportunity, Ralph. I think If they get Marcos Cáceres back in that defense, that's a very important piece they need. I believe they're going to get him back for these next game. I don't think they're going to get Camacho back yet, but Federico Santander is playing alongside Barceló, and this is a very interesting team that I think that can still do it. And they're not thinking much about the local league; they're far from it now after losing to Cerro Porteño. So they got to put their minds only on the Sudamericana.
Yeah, I'm quite excited by Guarani. I mean, it was a shame Emelec pulled that goal back, because I thought generally Guarani played very well. Federico Santander, that's 4 consecutive Sudamericana games he scored in. He's always been a really important player for them in the big competitions. But like you say, everyone's coming back from injury now. So you have Romeo Benitez is playing. You have Dorrego is back. You have Barceló is back. So they had a few, like a bit of a slump as injuries hit, but now everyone's coming back, and it's coming back at the right time. And like you say, it was something to play for. They don't have to worry about the league, because this is going to be the focus. So I think I think they're in a good position, Guarani. And then just the point on Tacuarembó, the only team that won the game they were meant to win at home, right? This was their easy game. It's the home game against the Bolivian team. There was money, there was the prize money there. They've gone out and they got it. And I don't think they'll qualify. Let's be honest. Like they're not going to get past Estudiantes and Bragantino, but they're winning the games that they wanted to win. And hey, maybe they can go out and do something and surprise somebody and pick up some more money. Just a great result for Ivan Almeida as well, who he's between the commentary box and managing teams, because for those that don't know, he's on Paraguayan TV a lot, right? He commentates, but then sometimes the call comes up to pick up a team, often it's Tacuarembó, and he comes in and he does a good job. I mean, he's obviously here for those that don't know, he's Eva Almeida's son, so he comes from some real footballing pedigree there, and he often does this, because he did it last year with Tacuarembó. He picked them up at the right time, got some really good results, and playing some quite exciting football, which again, for people that don't know, Tacuarembó are known to be the like Stoke City or the defensive team of Paraguay. They have like a bad reputation for that from way back. But he plays some exciting football, and there they went out and they scored 3 goals. So it was good to see. I'm glad that just one Paraguayan team this week won the home game they were meant to win.
Yes, at least some sort of saving grace for them. And we'll definitely talk about what's been going on with the other Paraguayan teams in our next episode. Of course, we got a Super Clásico having up in the next few days as well. So a very big game that we'll be focusing on here at Guarani Vision. To close it out again, for myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hannah, thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.